it's a volatile asset, but people get the volatility of it mistaken with what's going on under the hood. And whether the price is $69,000 or $15,000, nothing changed. The protocol was the same. It's just the market price. The exchange rate for US dollars changes constantly, but
And the policy of the dollars changes constantly. The
yeah,
reason Bitcoin has crashed in the last couple of years is because the Federal Reserve has made dollars a lot tighter. The Federal Reserve changed their monetary policy to the tightest monetary policy like ever in modern American history, and Bitcoin only went down to $15,000.
pretty well. Yeah,
It's already doubled off that. And even though the Fed has barely slowed down their tightening, and Bitcoin's already doubled. It's
yeah,
like what it's like I explain to people with the metaphor, and you'll love this with your engineering background. Perhaps you heard me say it, but it's like you have one person on a ship, you have another person on another ship. One of the two ships is sinking. They both see the volatility. There's volatility between the two ships, because if I'm looking at you, I have to change my telescope, and they were looking at me, change their telescope. There's volatility either way. It's just a matter of what's your what's your frame of reference. It's like if you're
yeah,
on the ship that's floating, well, the
yeah,
other one you just see it going down forever until it submerges, and if you're on the one that submerges, you're looking up, and it's just going up, and you think it's going up, and it's going to become a plane, and you're like, oh,
yeah,
well, that ship can't become a plane. Ships never become planes. Ships never go up forever. And you're saying that from your ship that's sinking, and that's why you think that. Anyway,
yeah,
that's my silly
yeah,
metaphor.
the outside perspective. But
Yeah,
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 the total addressable market of Bitcoin is just it's too compelling, and it's too, in my opinion, likely to happen. You know, it's the market's too big, and the things that can go wrong are so much less than owning any equity. This also applies to other asset classes. Real estate, you might buy a piece of real estate and something bad happens. Maybe you get like a bad governor or something, and then your tenant can't run his business there anymore, and you're not making income from your lease, or whatever. In gold, maybe there's a discovery of a huge asteroid mine or something, or I don't know, increase the
yeah.
supply of gold.
We
Everything has
don't
these.
know. Yeah,
Everything has higher, uh, more threats to it, and also a smaller total addressable market. So that's why I would allocate so heavily to Bitcoin. And I'm sure in the future it'll change for me personally, possibly. When I get older, maybe I want to diversify my assets just for less volatility. But for now, like Bitcoin is pretty much it. It's where I would put my money.
yeah. I think that's an interesting point because on one hand, perhaps you diversify more as you get older because you become lower risk as you get older. Your income goes down, but simultaneously, I think perhaps by that time that you are older, over the next, say, 10, 20, 30 years, I think Bitcoin's risk goes down the larger it grows. I think that's pretty clear at this point. Versus pretty much everything else, the larger it grows, the higher risk it becomes to a certain degree. The bigger Tesla, the company grows, the more incentive there is for other people to outcompete them and destroy the margins.
Yeah,
The
yeah,
larger gold the asset grows in value, the higher the incentive for someone to create a discovery and force it back down. But Bitcoin's different in that regard. It's the only thing like it, as far as I can tell, that becomes lower risk the larger it grows. But
yeah,
my point being that on one hand, yeah, perhaps maybe you'll diversify as you get older and more risk averse, let's say. But what if by that point, if you're saying already the Bitcoin is lower risk than everything else, what if it's 100 times lower risk than everything else by the time you get
yeah,
older? So perhaps
sure.
that offsets that incentive to concentrate
Whatever.
heavier in Bitcoin offsets your
Yeah.
incentive to diversify.
You're just holding perfect money at that point.
Yeah, what's the point?
Yeah. Yeah, right. Yeah, it's true. No, I haven't thought it through all the way out. We'll see
Well,
what
yeah,
happens
and
when I
who
get
knows?
there.
Who knows?
Yeah.
Who knows? Yeah, yeah. We'll see how it gets there. And it's funny because there are people like us that are already there that are very heavy in Bitcoin. Michael Saylor obviously is the most famous or infamous person on traditional Wall Street. He's gone completely against the grain with his peers, his other billionaires and CEOs and managers of businesses and public stock, that he sold his stock as fast as he could to buy Bitcoin, and he raised as much debt as he possibly could to buy Bitcoin. And his company is essentially the only company that is keeping up with the rate of Bitcoin's
Yeah.
appreciation.
Yeah. I think they'll
Yes.
outperform. I think they'll most likely outperform
Yeah.
Bitcoin. I mean, it's
Well,
just like the model of it. They're it's like a machine that generates additional Bitcoins that you can own. You can own a piece of it. So they have the software
yeah.
business. They're just desaying in a Bitcoin, and there's no management fee. Yeah, it's just a better like it'll probably I wouldn't hold it over spot Bitcoin, but it'll probably outperform spot Bitcoin. I would think
At least for a
over time.
time. Here's
Yeah.
something interesting to that exact point you just brought up. But this is a chart of company
Hmm.
stocks versus Bitcoin. So Bitcoin is the orange line there, obviously. This is just goes back to 2016. But you can see the S&P 500, so the total stock index, real estate, gold. So this here we can see, again, if we're using the ship metaphor, one sinking ship and the other sinking ships, we have Bitcoin that stays flat. One Bitcoin is equal to one Bitcoin. And we have all these other assets. So you were talking a minute ago about US real estate, about gold, and the S&P 500, which for those who don't know, hopefully everyone is that's a stock index here in the United States. Then you have other currencies. You have the peso and the lira, and you can see that they are all trending down against Bitcoin. And as a function of the volatility of the US dollar and the dollar's monetary policy, all these things are trending downward with time. So now we're at 2019. We're about to come up on the COVID scare or COVID crash, let's say, early 2020, February, March. There it was in March. And then from there, we can see, skip ahead a little bit, everything's continued to go down against Bitcoin. And so then and
Yeah.
people have trouble viewing it this way, but like this right here, if you can see my cursor, I don't know if you can or not,
Yeah. Yeah.
but like that is the quote unquote top of Bitcoin right now.
Yeah.
And so people look at that, they're like, oh, well, Bitcoin's crashed.
Yeah.
Whereas my vantage point is if you just extend your time horizon, the trend seems a little bit different than what we're told. But anyway, I originally wanted to find this because you were mentioning stocks, MicroStrategy stock. If you look here, MicroStrategy it revealed its plan to buy Bitcoin in July of 2020. Right here, what this arrow is, MicroStrategy is the red stock here. And I don't. We were talking a minute ago. I don't think you've seen this chart, but it goes exactly with what you just said. That MicroStrategy actually, from that arrow onwards, has been more volatile in Bitcoin terms. Has been volatile in Bitcoin terms, but it's roughly held its value compared to
Yeah.
all these other stocks. You have Tesla stock, which we've been talking about a lot. We have Apple, Google, the S&P 500, and this purple line here, and then the U.S. dollar, of course, has lost the most value here. But anyway, I found that interesting that MicroStrategy up till this point was going roughly the same, was falling down roughly the same rate as other equities, other stocks, and then it has been basically flat
Yeah.
since then. So anyway, that just goes to prove exactly what you were saying. But yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. That'll be interesting to watch that whole story play out because this is MicroStrategy I view as this kind of like a experiment and almost like financial engineering. It's like they created this hybrid asset that is like is basically a proxy for Bitcoin, but also has a software business attached.
yeah,
Um, yeah, I, it's really cool. I would own that. I would buy MicroStrategy stock over. I tweeted this. I would buy it over a Bitcoin ETF. Everybody's excited about the ETF, but I'm still more excited about MicroStrategy. There's no fees for it. It's a great proxy uh, for Bitcoin. Um, yeah, it should outperform. Yeah,
yeah. But ultimately, at the end of the day, MicroStrategy, ETF, or otherwise, we're trusting humans, and the outperformance
yeah,
is a function of the humans. And
yeah,
so, if you trust some humans better than others, you might be able to outperform Bitcoin, but it's probably not going to be a lot. Maybe well, probably not a lot. Probably,
yeah. And that's
yeah,
true. I should caveat that and say, as long as somebody as crazy as Michael Saylor is running the company, it'll outperform. But if different management takes over and they decide that the Bitcoin strategy is not for them anymore, it's a risk. So spot BTC definitely over MicroStrategy, but
yeah, yeah.
just a thought about that stock.
Yeah, but even if you're buying Bitcoin indirectly via buying a stock that holds Bitcoin, you're still not owning the same thing. It's like owning
Yeah,
a gold, a company that sells gold or a company that holds gold versus the gold itself in your own safe.
yeah,
It's not the downside risks are significantly higher when you have a company in between the asset
yeah,
and you. So anyway, I know we've taken a lot of your time. As we wrap up here, I have a couple more questions. One being you said you used to own those two things. Well, actually, an interesting way to view it is that you own Tesla, which let's say you view as the best company. Then you own Bitcoin, which let's say is the best money or the best commodity. And then you own cash, which is the best fiat currency. So it's like you're diversified in the three things that there is no second best, let's say. And For you personally, obviously, this is not financial advice to people, and probably most people won't have the conviction you do because they've not put in the same time or had the same gains that you have. But what is that allocation, if you don't mind saying? What percent is cash? What percent's Tesla? What percent's Bitcoin?
Um, so I don't know how much Bitcoin I own. Actually don't know the exact number. It's probably like 70% Bitcoin, uh, 15% cash, or sorry, 15% Tesla, and whatever the rest is of that. What are we at?
Wow. So
10%, 10%, 10, 15% cash, something like that. I don't know. I
you
don't know
don't
that
check the price.
I
Yeah.
don't track yeah, I don't really track that metric, so
That's, I
bottle.
we were talking earlier about judgment, and I think a good sign of when you know that it's just conviction and not obsession, let's say, is when you stop checking the price. So perhaps that's a
Yeah.
good thing that you don't know off the top of your head.
Yeah.
Yeah, but okay, so roughly your Bitcoin position is 3 or 4 times larger than your Tesla position.
Yeah.
Wow.
Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's great.
It's grown. It's shot up quite a bit. So is the Tesla,
Well, yeah,
but
but the
I've
Bitcoin has been
invested.
rising faster. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. And I put more into Tesla over the years than I did. Or sorry, I put more into Bitcoin over the years than I did Tesla. So
yeah.
just waiting based off conviction. So
Yeah. Well, we'll keep waiting for conviction. You mentioned 20 million per Bitcoin earlier, and I know obviously given everything we just said, we think 20 million is probably very, very way too low for Bitcoin. But you're saying 20 million is more likely than zero. Could you touch on that?
yeah. So I'm looking at my little charts here.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, pull it up or whatever.
so can I
And
screen?
the funny thing is when you explain Bitcoin to people and they aren't thinking in terms of deflation, technology, this, 20 million sounds absurd. Like, oh, there's not enough money in the world and blah, blah, blah. To them, it seems so unlikely. But, to us that are kind of thinking in those terms of a longer time horizon and trying to think of Bitcoin as repricing current assets and current debts and also future technology, to at least to me, it makes perfect sense.
Mhm.
I think 20 million, I think personally, I think Bitcoin will be 20 million US and the majority of the world will still not have bought Bitcoin. Like I think 20 million
Yeah.
is not eventually we'll get there. I think 20 million is a stepping stone of getting from here to there, just because I think the math is that simple. So did you find the article you're looking for?
I'm trying to figure out how to share my screen now.
Oh, it's at the bottom. It's at the bottom, share screen.
I do not see a share screens.
Okay. Here's something to emphasize what I just said. So this person said, I've been buying $10, 10 US worth of Bitcoin a day for 3 months, but they only own 3.5% of the Bitcoin. So 3,500,000 sats. And they're trying. And someone tagged me asking me to explain why. And this is what I said. Bitcoin is incredible and it's incredibly important, which is why it means a lot that you're watching this video and you're taking the time. I do this because I believe it is a really, really important innovation that we've discovered a way to not have a single point of failure at global base layer money. See, fiat money, political currency units, and gold, all other forms of money up to this point in history have had a single point of failure. This has been the largest monetary problem in human history for the last 4,000 years. And now we have Bitcoin, and Bitcoin solves that single point of failure problem. And now, therefore, we have a new single point of failure problem, and that is how do we custody and store that Bitcoin properly for the long term in a safe and secure way that brings peace of mind. That's why I work at the Bitcoin Advisor. If you were to be hit by a bus, does your spouse, do your kids, do your loved ones and beneficiaries know how to access your Bitcoin? Do you have a proper self-custody storage method to where there is no single point of failure? Not from yourself, not from your seed device, not from where your seed phrase is stored. Have you considered these questions? Have you gotten your UTXOs managed? Do you have jurisdictional arbitrage? Have you considered all the trust, taxes, and estate planning requirements that are associated with becoming a high net worth person? Because if you are buying Bitcoin right now, you are going to become a high net worth person. Are you prepared for the amount of Bitcoin you have to skyrocket in value 2x, 5x, 10x, or 100x eventually? That's the time horizon you should have. And so you need to be preparing today for that future. How are you going to custody your Bitcoin? How are you going to leave that Bitcoin for your future generations? Because after all, that's what we do this for, right? you're buying Bitcoin for your kids, you're buying it for your grandkids. And so I highly recommend you start thinking in those long-term time periods now, because companies are coming, charities are coming, high net worth individuals are coming, and all of them are going to realize that having an allocation to a multi-sig collateral custody vault is going to be something that is of serious consideration for them. So once you understand Bitcoin is a beautiful innovation for not having a single point of failure at the base layer currency, now you have to start seriously considering, how do I have my custody stored where there is no single point of failure? Okay, if you want to learn more about that, please click the link in the description. I have dozens of pages of free educational content for you and videos. I'm happy to help in that free way. And then if you want individual help, I'm also happy to help you join the Bitcoin Advisor, where you can be an ongoing client. You can become one of my clients, and I'd be happy to help you in the years to come to make sure your Bitcoin's protected, to where no matter what, no matter if thieves or scammers or spammers or yourself or your family member or whoever, no matter whether it's due to theft or loss, misallocation, misplacement, or just other mistakes, I'm happy to help you and be that voice of reason in the coming years ahead. So click the link in the description. I'd be happy to help. Check it out. Thanks. That there are less than 2 million Bitcoin left on exchanges, which is true. We can verify that. And then you have BlackRock filing for the ETF, Fidelity, and others that are trying to come after Bitcoin. You have the billionaires, thousands of billionaires. You have tens of thousands of centimillionaires, hundreds of thousands decamillionaires, and millions of millionaires. And then you have nations, all of which can print their own currencies, an infinite amount of their own currencies. And so it's like, assuming they buy zero Bitcoin, not zero Bitcoin, not one, then that's 40,000 sats per human adult today, or
Yeah.
40, 0.0004 Bitcoin. And so 3.5% of a Bitcoin is 0.035 Bitcoin. So like 3.5% of a Bitcoin easily could be like 1,000 times more than what the average person in the future would be able to buy. And that's only 5 billion adult humans. That's not including the additional 2 billion adult humans that will age and be born in the next couple of decades. That doesn't include the
Yeah.
autonomous robots. That doesn't include the AI. And that doesn't
Yeah.
include that the average prosperity for a person in 30 years will probably be significantly higher than the average prosperity of a person today. So it's like, at a certain point, it's just absurd.
Yeah.
But yeah,
It,
to clarify, for me, 20 million is nothing.
stepping
But
stone.
that's the number you
I
said. So I want
I
you
I
to
I mentioned
finish on that point.
the number $20 million. That's not some sense of, so I'm of the belief that I don't think it's reasonable to put a price target on Bitcoin. There is no price target you can put on it. It's infinity. The purchasing power of Bitcoin will go up forever. So I say $20 million. I have like this chart where it's like that's like 50% of current global assets, and factoring in monetary inflation, 20 so 50% of global assets, current global assets, put it at $20 million in my estimates, and factoring in inflation, it wouldn't even need to capture 50% of global assets to reach $20 million. So 20 million is a stepping stone, but in my opinion, up and forever, it doesn't make sense to put a price target on it because there is no limit on the invention of it's the only perfectly reliably truthfully scarce 100% scarce asset that humanity knows. So that asset will accrue value relative to everything else forever. There's no point in putting a price target on it, but you can say 20 million, but that's a stepping stone. $20 million, who cares? It'll go up forever, and it'll probably go up pretty quickly too.
Yeah, yeah. Well, time of recording, Bitcoin's just over $30,000 US, so it's got a ways to go. And I think to finish off here, I think something important to say is that it's not just about Bitcoin going up; it's about everything else coming down, which ultimately is a good thing. Food prices come down as a function of Bitcoin going up. House prices and housing becomes more affordable as Bitcoin goes up, and so that's a beautiful thing. That's the exciting thing, that everything gets cheaper. Everything, the prosperity gains of society are actually reflected in the base layer money, which I know this is something you said earlier that's a concern of yours. How do we make sure that the productivity gains from all these forms of technology are being distributed evenly? I would argue that the best way to do that is have this form of money that can't be manipulated, because then you can't
Yeah,
manipulate those prosperity gains to one person over another
yeah,
person. And
yeah,
so, yeah, I mean, I guess that's why I always say get off zero to people, because it's like
exactly.
once you understand Bitcoin, you understand, oh, Bitcoin's going to skyrocket. It's like, no, the more accurate thing is that everything else is about to collapse. because
Yeah.
all these assets have been propped up for decades with fake money and artificial growth. And then we're also real growth on top of that, which is an even bigger deal than the collapse of fake money. So yeah, do you have a little tidbit to encourage people to get off zero, or and then tell
Yeah.
us where we can find you?
Yeah, sure. You cut out for a
Oh,
small bit there, so
yeah.
if I didn't catch everything you said, I'm sorry. But yeah, yeah, I encourage everybody to study Bitcoin if you're watching this, um, study Bitcoin as much as you can. There's no reason to have a 0% allocation to it. Um, there's apps where you can get free Bitcoin, literally, like the Lolly app or the Fold app. They have like this daily spin and treasure chest you can press. So you can get some free satoshis that way. But so therefore, I think there's no excuse to have literally zero Bitcoin. At least play around with it. Learn what you can. So yeah, you can find me on Twitter. I'm at the powerful HRV. Um, maybe I should. That's my that's my. I've had that name forever. Maybe I should change it to
Well,
something
your
more.
argument's very powerful, so it
Yeah,
still holds
I
true.
I still like it. Yeah.